Hey folks, it's Who's with Doom. This is a hobby journey video for December. Basically, just looking at what I painted or collected and my plans for January in December. But suffice it to say, I did an inventory of my models at the beginning of December. Kind of got my AOS component up to date. And the biggest news is that my collection, in terms of points, now exceeds 100,000 points, which is kind of a big milestone for any collector. In general, I'd say that the heroes in AOS were kind of reduced in points, but the rank and file went up. The 40k side is now actually a smaller portion of the collection. The fantasy side is a little bit larger now, and in terms of models as well. Just kind of over years putting more emphasis into fantasy, but I'm confident, even though a lot of my 40k point numbers and things are a little bit outdated because they're based on earlier army books and codexes, and I realized that modern 40k, the value of things was kind of reduced, so your armies are much bigger, but there are a number of box sets and things like that are not quite tabulated. They're not added into the inventory, like the Betrayal of Caliph box. This is for 30k, obviously, but just in general points, and a few other starter boxes and stuff like that are not added in, and so I'm fairly and it does exceed 100,000 points by a few thousand. So I think I'm safe to say that I do now have legitimately 100,000 points worth of Warhammer, which is kind of fun. I have no clue what the next milestone will really be. Everything else is probably impossible to really get to in a lifetime. So starting off in December, Mrs. Hooves got this big purchase for me, and she was planning on wrapping it up, but the box was just far too big, and she couldn't move it herself. So she was kind of she wasn't really sure how to surprise me or to keep it hidden. So that was a Husky Container, and which is great. I actually thought about using these Husky containers at one point to contain or to hold all my models and stuff, but they're really expensive cabinets. So that's why I went with the more economical plastic drawers. But this is actually really nice. I put all my paints in there, and airbrushes and stuff like that, which is great. So I did make an order in December, late December. I'm waiting on the Manticore, which is currently unavailable from Games Workshop. So I suspect that will arrive probably sometime in January. So you'll probably see that order in January, I hope. But in the meantime, for Christmas, I just got a couple little things apart from that nice cabinet. I got Lord Castellan Creed for the purposes of the Imperial Guard. It's one of the main special characters for the Acadians. Hashtag Acadia stands, despite the current campaign. And then I got my first box of Demigryphs, which I talked a little bit about in my Free Guild models. So I finished graduate school. I traded all my textbooks in, or a good portion of them, and I actually sold some models in December. Some, which is kind of very unusual for me. I generally don't sell models, but I'm going to try to sell excess bits that I don't really see a point in having, but also duplicate models. So for instance, I bought Gore Chosen, I think in November or October, one of those two, and that comes with a Slaughter Priest model. But I also bought the Warhammer Quest expansion that had the exact same model. So rather than having two in my Khorne Bloodbound army, I decided to put that on eBay and sell it. And there are a few other models like that, like in the starter box. I don't mind keeping a bunch of more generic troops, but for the special characters in the starter box, I just don't want to see too many duplicate models. As a model collector, I'd rather focus on huge armies and unique special characters. So I've started to kind of put those on eBay and sell them off, and I sold maybe $100 worth or something in December. So that the textbooks that I trade into Amazon, the reason I mention that is because I get points on Amazon, and then I ordered some things through that. So I got a Bloodthirster through Amazon. So after I finished Astra Militarum and Free Guild, one of my next projects is Khorne Demons, so I've started kind of collecting those up, getting those ready so I have them, and I can just immediately start once one of my current projects is finished. And I also got some Christmas money and stuff as well, which is where most of this order that's coming in January is from. And then I got Carbrand. So if I'm going Khorne Demons, I've got to at least get one. You have to get Carbrand. He's kind of he was actually a good deal, about the same price as the Bloodthirster. So not too bad. Again, this is, I think, through Amazon. But in general, so in December too, Tabletop Banter, if you haven't checked out their channel, I'll put a link in as well. And they did a subscriber giveaway for reaching 500 subs. And I happened to have, it was kind of a little bit competition where you had to put your comment in, and then they randomly draw a comment, and it happened to be my comment, so I won. And so that gives me a Start Collecting box, which I've requested one for Khorne Demons. So that'll get kind of added in. And so there I have I already had an old metal Bloodthirster, some metal Bloodletters, and then 21 plastic Bloodletters as well. So, my Khorne Demon army is starting to take shape. I think it's going to be pretty cool. The way I'm thinking of designing it, it's going to have Carbrand and then one of each of the 3 unique Bloodthirsters, and then a bunch of Bloodletters. So it's just going to be a bunch of Bloodthirsters, but I think that'd be cool. So I've run the risk of being like that guy that gives models away for the purposes of me to use, but Mrs. Hooves did ask for some Warhammer this Christmas, so I actually gave her some Wildwood Rangers and like those archers of Avalorn. She wants to make a wood elf army that's all women and all kind of, and I think she'll probably go into a tree lords and stuff like that as well. But I think she has some cool ideas. I really kind of want to help her in that endeavor as much as I can. So I bought her a few different wood elf kits that she can use. But hopefully, I know she wants to paint. Right now, she really can't for a few different reasons. But I hope that she can kind of get to it maybe later in January or start in February and just kind of try to paint a little bit. She was working on some terrain, but I think that was a little bit boring. We'll see. So I did get some other books. This is also for Christmas too. Come on. I got the Khorne Demonkin Codex for 40K. And Mrs. Hughes knew I was going to work on Khorne Demons. But I don't know if I'm going to incorporate Khorne Demonkin because it's really Chaos Space Marines and Khorne Demons. But I still like having the other codexes as reference. And I think in future months, my plan is to really transition away from so many more models as much as focusing on different books that I don't have. There's a lot of codexes and things like that I don't have. There's a lot of campaign books for 40K recently that I completely missed, and I'm really energized by the current campaign that's really starting. So I think I'm going to start collecting the other campaign books that have come out. So part of that is the Red Wah, which is a campaign that started, I think, in 2014. There are 2 books in the series. The other one I should get in January as well. But I mostly bought these books initially because they have the Imperial Guard formations. So this has one, like an armored formation, which is kind of good. And then I got the Monk Ta, which is the hardcover set. This is there's 2 books in this campaign. This is the second one. Again, the first book I think I'm going to be getting in January. But again, this has a bunch of formations for Astra Militarum and Cadians specifically. So that's something that I really wanted to get, so I can kind of make my 40k army a little bit more modernized in some respects. But it's a really cool book. I'll be reading through the story. What I really love about these campaigns in some respects is ever since about 2014 is that they've really been pushing the narrative. Obviously both in 40k and in fantasy as well, where they started the end times about the same time in 2014. So because I'm collecting Khorne Demons, I want to collect all the different codexes that go with it. I know some of these are outdated, but that's okay. So I got the Chaos Demons for 40k. I think this one is the current one, but it's a few years old at this point. And then I got the old, I think 5th edition one as well. So I'm getting near to the point where I have, with the exception of all the AOS battle tomes and codexes from 6th and 7th 40k, I have most of the codexes from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And on the fantasy side, I have like all but one of the 4th edition army books. And I have most, if not all, of the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th army books. So now I'm getting to the point where I don't need to start collecting books looking back. I can start collecting, the current or more useful ones, although their prices are more. But I really think that transitioning away, if I need models for an upcoming project, I think that's a good use of resources. For the Khorne Demons, I think maybe another Start Collecting box and another Bloodthirster, and then maybe that might be it for them. And then I need to start collecting some Nurgle Rotbringers. But I think, in general, I'd like to maybe transition away and pick up some of the older campaign books, the older army books that I don't have. And there's lots of older books in general, just art and fluff books. Catalogs from like the 1990s and stuff like that, which I would like to get. So that's basically what I added to the collection for the most part. On one further note, I did get a box of the sculpted bases for fantasy and for 40k, and I, as many of you know, in the last Hobby Journey video, I was really talking about whether or not I wanted to incorporate that into the new armies. I think they look pretty good, and I think you could paint them really nicely and really customize an army, such like there's a lot of new articles in White Dwarf that kind of show you how you can use the regular techniques that you use on bases, but then apply them onto these, and I think they look really nice. But my biggest thing with them, if you start using them for 40k, it's purely an additional cost, because you already have round bases. And I don't have the 40k a battle board, so it's not like they're going to match that well. Maybe at some point I will pick that up, but that's not something I own right now. For the fantasy bases, because I have so many older Warhammer Fantasy armies that do need to be rebased. They don't have to be, but I just prefer the round bases. Those sculpted bases are generally cheaper than buying the traditional round bases. But I actually already own, well, from like last Christmas. I already got a bunch of the generic round bases already, so I already have kind of a surplus of those. Certainly enough to do the free guild at least. And so what I kind of realized is, first off, I could put those on eBay and sell them and just pick up these new bases. But I kind of quickly realized once you start pricing them out, like it was to do both the Imperial Guard and the Free Guild on those new bases would be like a couple $100, and that's not something I would prefer to put my resources towards. I'd rather pick up unique models themselves or pick up different books. So I don't think I'm going to be going that route after all. So on the painting side, well, I did do the Death Lords. I did finish those in December. I'll post a link to my video where I show off the completed models if you haven't seen that yet. And basically, I think on that front, I did do some Cadian conscripts. They're not quite finished, but they are very near. I had to go get some paints from the local GW because my collection of paints is, I have like the entire range of paints from Games Workshop, but they're kind of old, and we've traveled across the country several times with them in like horrible weather conditions, like in the middle of the winter and stuff. So some of them are kind of dried out and not in the best condition, but so I had to go kind of get some new ones to finish the Cadian conscripts. But they're very close to being finished, and I think they look pretty good. Other than that, I did get a couple extra things for painting. My airbrush broke in October, just after I primed everything for Holy Havoc. So the Death Lords I didn't use the airbrush on, but I got a new airbrush this month, which is the Iwata Eclipse. It's a more high quality airbrush than I had before. I think the last one I got was like the Masters set. It was like $80, but it came with the compressor and so on and so forth. So I think the airbrush itself was like $25. This one's quite a bit more, but I'm hoping it comes on. Some pretty good people in the PMP like Vince and a few others recommended this. There's some other really good options, but this is what I went with. And I haven't had an opportunity to use it yet. It's still in the box, so we'll see. We'll see how it actually works. But I'm hoping it's a little bit better than the last one. And then I bought some brush cleaner, because actually I did get a bunch of brushes for Christmas as well, from like the brushes from Games Workshop. Mrs. Hooves picked me up a new set, which is nice. And I'm going to try to keep it a little bit better. They didn't last too long last time. So I'm going to try to keep a little bit better, be a little bit more careful of how I use them, and then use this as well to kind of preserve them. So I graduated from grad school in December. I took a couple weeks to kind of just chill out, but I want to keep busy while I look for a job. And so part of that is I'm going to do a lot of painting and focus down on the hobby. So I hope for the January hobby journey that I have a lot of different pictures to kind of show you of Cadian and Free Guild models. I think the biggest deal with collecting, and in some ways this is related to painting as well, is I need to focus on moving on projects. So like, because I know I might not come back to, like, say, the Cadian shock troops for maybe a few years or more, it's easy to think to myself, well, I should pick up all the special characters and all the unique Cadian stuff. And I'm very tempted to do that. Likewise, with Khorne Demons, like, should I pick up every possible, unique Khorne model? It's really tempting. And same with Rotbringers. And same with probably any project I do. I'm trying to make that fine line between making the projects far too big to the point where I just can't complete them, or it takes me half a year to complete them, which is not what I like to do. Eventually, I'd like to do these projects month to month, but I need to have a finished army first, because I don't want to just paint one or two models out of an army, but not have it be able to be used effectively on the table. So eventually I like to do just smaller additions to existing armies, but right now I need to focus on getting just armies collected. Now, as a model collector, I'm always afraid of models going out of stock. Most people have that, I often read comments and things like that about people saying, well, this week or this month there wasn't anything for me in releases, so I can, I'm okay. I can, there's not a need to go out and buy stuff. Because I try to collect rather stupidly every army for 40k in fantasy, every single week is like, oh my god, I want to get that stuff. So I'm really trying to focus on these projects, not just buying random stuff, but then at the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, well, what if those models go out of print, or they're available for a limited time, or what? So part of that is, should I go and buy the complete model range for each project as I work on it? But I'm really also, as I said, trying to find a balance there, because rationally I know it's not really that possible to collect every Games Workshop model. They produce far too many every single month, or to actually keep up with it, let alone paint. But also, the longer I spend time on one project, the more likely that future projects, those models will go out of print. So it's not actually getting ahead of anything. So I think I should, I really am tempted. I really am torn between trying to do it or not. But I think I'm going to try to just move ahead, not try to get everything, and try to make these projects, go for a 2,000 point army, maybe a little bit of an extra cushion, in case I want to expand or something like that. But quite honestly, the more armies I get finished anyways, if I, work on my Khorne Demons, and then I can work on Khorne Bloodbound, well, if I need a bigger army, you can just combine the two, right? Because of the alliance system in AOS, or even allies in 40k, you can kind of do that much easier than in the past. So I don't need to, if I only have a smaller army of Rotbringers, that's fine, in terms of adding more forces to it in the future. So we'll see. I think that's the smarter way to do it. It really depends on how long it takes me to finish Astra Militarum and Free Guild. If I finish those armies, say, by April, I'm not going to wait around. I'm going to immediately jump into Khorne Demons. And I would prefer to get ahead of the curve, where I'm not buying models for projects that I'm currently working on, because that just pushes the length of the project back by so much more time. So what I'm doing with the Free Guild is, and the couple extra tanks I'm buying for the Cadians, it's not something I want to keep doing. The Free Guild, I think, was necessary because they were completely inept on the battlefield as my current collection stood. So you kind of need to buy some things for it, but not push it back to the point where I'm just working on something for 8 months straight, because that's not what I want to do. I want to move through projects as quick as possible, because I have tons on that list, and there are so many unpainted armies that I have that I want to get out and want to use. So for reading in December, I keep reaching over here. I read through Book 6 and Book 7 of the Beast Arises series, which is a really cool series. It takes place. I've been talking about this series through most of, I guess, 2016. But it takes place, after the Horus Heresy, the Imperium, in the pre-Horsey days. I think it's a couple thousand years old or something. So it's in its infancy, and it has a lot of origin stories to it. I think this is where they say a death watch was organized and stuff like that. Although I think that's in the next book, but it's a really interesting series because the orcs do not operate like regular orcs. There's something else kind of going on there because they're much more organized. They're actually somewhat competent. They're employing a bunch of strategies. They're like marching. So there's a lot of kind of mystery about what's going on. And you get to see a Primarch return, which is kind of interesting. In the Horus Heresy, that's not too uncommon, but it's kind of cool to see them come back in the series as well. Because we see them now returning in 40k. Gaming side was pretty light in December. I did play some Warhammer Quest with Mrs. Hooves a couple times. We're now entering the third of the realms of the third tier of the tower, and so we're kind of anxious to kind of move on. But we really enjoy that game, and what we just absolutely love about it is the fact that you can work as a team without being against each other, which is kind of nice because we don't get too mad at each other if we win or lose or how well you do, and we try to kind of effectively work as a team because I'm using the Stormcast and she's using the Warrior Priest, and so we're both on the same team. And then basically just for community news, Tyler Emerson, who's a friend of the channel, a really good guy. He does the Scrubby and Wells podcast. He put up a nice article on the Warhammer community page about his army that he'll be taking to Adepticon, which is a really nice little read through, really enjoyable. And of course, the Warhammer YouTubers did their awards as well, but we still don't know who won the different categories at this point. And then briefly for a channel update. So, I got some plans for the channel. I've always thought about doing a blog or something else, like a different medium, because often when I do a lot of videos, it's all written out in semi-loose script as it is. So writing it into pure easy to read English would be not too difficult. So maybe I'll make a blog this year. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe I should just do it this month. We'll see. But that's always been on the kind of the back of my mind. I also want to do a bunch of new different series as well, since I have the time right now. And one of those is maybe a news series on the weekend. Thinking the weekend. Maybe that's not the best time to do a news series. But basically just a discussion of the new releases, potential rumors, basically just a commentary on what's being released and what the future releases might be. It's probably a good week to start because of the upcoming campaigns and the releases for Tzinch for AOS in January. But I also want to do a lot more Warhammer and Classics videos as well. I probably might do a couple this month in January, but I really want to ramp that up quite a bit in 2017. But I also want to add in a couple different series, and one is a series on Warhammer lore from different armies, different special characters, just kind of go over them, probably read or combine the lore from different army books into a cohesive narrative. And then I've often thought about doing video series on a gaming history in Warhammer. Eventually, I do a different rule books in the game, did different time periods, but I'm kind of thinking also campaigns and stuff like that. Kind of go back over some of the older ones. And for those that are interested in Warhammer models, old and new, I'm thinking of doing a model history series. Now, a lot of these series I plan on kind of wrapping around my current projects. So, random discussion topics, responses to topics of the week by Vince Venturella, and commentary on new releases or what's going on. Those will be an ongoing thing. But I'm thinking for the purposes of Warhammer and Classics, Warhammer lore, gaming history, model history, I'm going to wrap those around my current projects. So if you like Imperial Guard or Free Guild or Empire, I guess I'll probably move a little bit into Empire as well. These might be of interest to you. So, as I go through my project, the plan is, and I've already kind of done that, is to go through my army design, go through the models, and then show you showcases of the models as I paint them. But I thought, it'd be interesting to talk about the lore of the actual project I'm working on, look at the classical influences of the projects that I'm working on, and kind of go from there. But that's the plan, and thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again next month for a hobby journey in January. Have a good one. Bye.